China's National People's Congress, the NPC, is the supreme organ of state power. It is authorized to pass laws and to help supervise them. The Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference, the CPPCC, provides consultation, participates in decision-making, and exercises a kind of supervision. The two together, now holding their annual meetings, are nicknamed Two Sessions. And while they have long been derided as rubber stamps, ratifying in public what party leaders have already decided in private, change is inexorable, driven by the sheer complexity of society and the sudden ubiquity of online information. A prime example is the multifaceted process of developing a comprehensive civil code, now targeted for 2020. This year, a draft of the general provisions of civil law will be reviewed by lawmakers and political advisors. We watch the process at work to get closer to China. It is the high season for China's politics, when NPC deputies and CPPCC members meet in the Great Hall of the People, literally across the street from Tiananmen Square. Though the two sessions meet every year, it's still a special occasion for union. I was pleased to see Wang Chen, NPC Vice Chairman and Secretary General, Wang Guoqing, CPPCC spokesman, and Ye Xiaowen, Central Committee member and former Director of the State Administration of Religious Affairs.
Last economic performance was good. The national economy was stable and supply-side structural reform was pushed forward steadily. Based on that, we should continue our efforts this year.
There will be many important events in China this year. The 19th National Congress of the Communist Party of China will convene. This year will be an important year for China to implement its 13th five-year plan.
We all know that the Chinese nation used to spread traditional culture and values through traditional opera. I think traditional opera will continue to play a significant role on this front in the new era.
During their stay in Beijing, these political elites from across the country keep a busy schedule, preside over, in the technical sense, Premier Li Keqiang's report of the work of the government, listen to the work report of the NPC Standing Committee, scrutinize China's budgets and development plan, and vote on the new general provisions of the civil law. All these two sessions activities must take place within about 10 days, and everyone must follow a set of rules, written or unwritten. That's part of the reason why foreigners see the two sessions as a political show, a big staged performance using the sobriquet rubber stamp. Why has China's National People's Congress, the NPC, been labeled a rubber stamp? For one, the NPC must unswervingly adhere to the leadership of the party, unswervingly being a kind of Chinese characteristic term of art. For another, the national legislature has never turned down a bill put to a final vote. However, when its nearly 3,000 delegates meet here in the Great Hall of the People, the NPC gives increasing voice to the Chinese people, representing how they feel. Otherwise, there wouldn't be so many reporters here. Moreover, not all decisions are made now unanimously. Furthermore, members of the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference are more outspoken, as many are leading professionals in their fields. Here are some of the messages from the NPC and CPPCC over the last 10 days.
GDP growth of around 6.5% or higher is possible in practice. The projected target for this year's growth is realistic and in keeping with economic principles. It will help to steer the steady expectations to make structural adjustments.
We will carry out the decisions and plans of the party's Central Committee on deepening reforms of the national supervision system. This means that we will revise the law on administrative supervision and make it into a national supervision law, so as to provide legal guarantees as we establish a centralized, unified, authoritative and highly efficient national supervision system.
We're shifting our focus from high-speed growth to medium speed over a 5-year period. As for the target of 6.5% GDP growth this year, on the one hand, it is necessary for us to maintain this growth speed because our population is approaching 1.4 billion, and employment is a huge issue. On the other hand, there are still points of weakness that need to be strengthened to ensure that China achieves its goal of becoming a moderately prosperous society by 2020.
With protectionism and unilateralism on the rise, the Belt and Road Initiative is a common cause where all countries roll up their sleeves and pitch in together. The initiative will help to rebalance economic globalization and make it more inclusive and equitable. It also represents an important attempt at building a community of shared future for all humankind.
While the sessions are planned carefully, even scripted, this is Premier Li Keqiang's work report. They are useful for discerning political priorities and economic expectations. Officials have used past meetings to send signals on important policy moves, such as the end of the one-child policy in 2016. This year, all eyes are on the general provision of the civil law. It defines the very basic terms that will undergird civil law, and it is a first step toward a comprehensive civil law code for China. China's current general principles of the civil law has been in place since 1986. Though it was amended in 2009, many of its articles have become obsolete or inapplicable as a result of rapid economic development and dramatic social change catalyzed by China's reform and opening up. Once approved, the revised general principles will provide a framework for interpreting 200 current civil and commercial laws. To get up to speed on the new general provisions, NPC deputies have been briefed prior to the two sessions. You're a delegate from the Jiangxi delegation. Have you had a chance to read the draft general provisions of the civil law?
Yes, I've read the draft. I'm a teacher. I understand the general terms. My focus, though, is on terms regulating guardianship, because there are juveniles who suffer from domestic violence. Their rights have to be protected.
Have you had an opportunity to read the general draft provisions of the civil law?
I've received the draft in January. Workshops were held on the subject at the provincial level. Our NPC deputies' opinions were collected.
Have you heard of any delegates, yourself included, who have objected to some of the provisions or have offered any corrections?
There certainly are different opinions. There have been debates and discussions, and the general consensus was reached. The draft we are going to vote on is the fourth of its kind. It reflects opinions from all sides.
To appreciate the importance of the new legislation and its influence on the socialist legal system with Chinese characteristics, I'll speak with Zhi Hong, member of the Legislative Affairs Commission of the NPC Standing Committee. 你好，非常感谢今天，请坐，请坐。好，谢谢。Right now, we have a new draft of the general provisions of civil law being discussed by the National People's Congress, and after the discussions, it will be presumably passed. Trace the history of why there is this new general provisions of the civil law now. There have been general principles in the past, so why is there now need for this new version?
Exactly. We have general principles of the civil law in use at the moment. It was compiled 30 years ago in 1986. Considering our national conditions back then, we achieved quite a milestone in the legal system. In retrospect, we still find that many rules and regulations were quite advanced and had foresight. The concept of protecting rights is just one of many examples. Over 30-plus years, the general principles played a significant role in protecting the rights of citizens, coordinating civil juristic relations, and maintaining social stability and economic prosperity. But this time, we came up with these new general provisions. The main reason is that we want to keep up with the times and cater to society's new demands. After all, the general principles have 30 years of history, and there are new circumstances that call for a targeted adjustment of the law. Therefore, the general provisions of the civil law are an updated version, with improvements and additions made to the old principles. Many regulations are consistent with those in the general principles.
The process of introducing this draft general provisions of civil law has not been easy. There have been a number of attempts and versions of this in the past. What have been some of the controversies, the debates that people have had in the past that have prevented the general provisions from being submitted at an earlier time?
Throughout the drafting process, the biggest challenge we face is how to effectively coordinate interests and demands from different sides. We need to come up with practical solutions to address public concerns. This is the biggest challenge. Yet the best way to solve the disputes and controversies is to promote scientific and democratic legislation. By scientific legislation, I mean we must draft the law and follow basic rules in professional legislation and respect basic principles of the civil law. As for democratic legislation, we need to hear opinions from all sides and carry out in-depth investigation and research. As we draft the general provisions, we adopted many methods to solicit public opinion. As you mentioned, the draft we submitted is already the fourth to be reviewed. The earlier versions were submitted to the Standing Committee of the NPC in June, October, and December in 2016. After each review, we would publicize the draft and solicit opinions across society. What's more, we delivered our draft to every NPC delegate in the meeting and asked for their opinion. This is how we solicit public opinion.
What are some examples of issues or questions on which there are different opinions that you need to solicit the different advice so you could come up with a consensus view?
To give you an example, I want to talk about the protection of civil rights. As I've said, to keep up with the times and reflect the characteristics of today's society, we dedicated a chapter to the protection of information and virtual property. In this process, before the draft was submitted for initial review, we gathered different opinions. Some scholars believe we can apply rights that are already in place. They think data and virtual property can be covered by the creditors' rights law, while others say they can be protected through the property rights law. Still, others think it's a form of intellectual property and can be covered by the law on IPR. Each idea has its logical background, and scholars put their opinions forward based on their past experiences and from their own perspectives. But they share a common goal. They agree that property should be protected. This consensus makes our work much easier. So in the final version, we considered two things. First, property should be protected by the law. Regarding which category it belongs to, we won't rush making a decision. The first thing is to guarantee protection. The category's definition can be left to the specific provisions, or we can attach judicial explanations for improvement. This is a simple example.
The draft general provisions of the civil law was first a standing committee in June 2016, and after being released to the public has received more than 70,000 suggestions.
For example, if a kid needs to choose a guardian between his parents when they divorce, will a 6-year-old have the intellectual ability to make a decision? I don't really think that this is the case.
Students' compulsory education starts when they reach 6 years old. It means learning capacity needed, but not actually so in terms of their cognitive ability. When we talk about limited capacity for civil conduct, a person should have a basic understanding of his surroundings and can identify his own behavior. If there should be modifications considering today's changing times, I suggest we lower the age limit to 8 years old.
I'm not saying we can't lower the age limit, but if we want to set the standard at 6, we need more support from research. We have consensus that at 10, children's mental development is relatively mature, and with 4 years of primary education, they already have a basic sense of right and wrong and good and evil, as well as the ability to make independent judgments and the idea of obeying the law.
Compiling a civil code requires two steps. First, formulating the general provisions of the civil law, and then integrating separate civil laws into a unified code. The general provisions cover comprehensive areas of legal regulations that concern people's civil lives, and it's seen as a major step forward in codifying a legal system that will better protect the civil activities of society. Legislation is the first step towards instituting a comprehensive rule of law. But to evaluate a law's effectiveness requires critical observations from a practitioner. That's why I speak with Wang Junfeng, a CPPCC member and president of the All China Lawyers Association. Understanding what laws state and mean is his job. Here's one question that many of my professional friends in the U.S. Would ask me about China. And they say, it's very good that China is now emphasizing rule of law. But we've heard this for a long time. Why is it that China is a country that keeps needing to say we need to improve the rule of law? What's been the problem?
The Communist Party and the central government and all the society today in China, we always try our best to improve from this level to another high. And also we have to follow in the progress of society. I mean, the internet, modern technology changed a lot. Yes. You have to, improve every day. Many people know the mobile bicycles is anywhere in the city, yes. Small in the street, anywhere. But 1 year ago, or even half years ago, you can see this, okay? So the time, the day by day changing. Every single person, every organization, like my law firm or country, need to improve themselves.
And circumstances are changing yes. so rapidly that you have to adapt to them in addition.
Yes, yes.
When they were going about this very elaborate and intricate process of drafting the general provisions now, how much did they consult practicing lawyers from the Lawyers Association, from major law firms in the process? I know there were a lot of academic experts, but how about practicing lawyers? Were you involved in the process?
We have many connections with the lawmakers. Through our All China Bar Association, together with different levels bar, we can collect ideas or comments to the draft.
So did you do that officially from the Lawyers Association, the yes. Bar Association? So the Bar Association canvasses its members, and its members contribute, and then you organize it and give it to the legislation commission of the National People's Congress. Is that the way yes. it works?
For example, from the All China Bar Association, we have different, specialist team, yes, sure. Criminal or civil, and even international trading law, different committee. We keep connect with the lawmakers, not just the general rules of civil law, even all other law during the process sure. in drafting. We bring the practitioner and also legal expertise. We will involve, give our comments.
How does that process literally work in terms of the legislative NPC sending you information and asking you to draft, or do you volunteer it? How does the process work, and what are some examples?
There are many meetings, discussing the specific okay. rules during the making the law. They may, ask expert together, like a small forum, talking and collect ideas.
So you would be asked in different areas to put an expert team together.
Yes, that's right.
And then have a conversation or written material on different specific topics. It's fascinating to me to discuss these very technical areas of the law, and I reflect that the members of the National People's Congress and the CPPCC come from all walks of life. They're not professional legislators in any sense. They all have independent jobs. And so how can we expect these non-professionals in a legislative sense to be able to thoroughly understand these complex, if not arcane, principles and to offer opinions that are really worth considering? There are a few, of course, who are expert in areas, but it's a very small percentage of the totality of the delegates of either of the two sessions.
Brilliant question. I've said that the general provisions are part of our civil code. Indeed, they have great practicality. But they're also highly professional. A lot of technical terms are involved. They're hard to understand, not only for the general public, but also for legal staff. So we pay special attention to turning the obscure and unintelligible language into popular and accessible words for the public, because they are the law's target. To help equip them with the law, we need to first help them understand it. So we must use simple language. Actually, we've been trying to use plain Chinese to achieve the goal. At the same time, we exert effort of the law. This time, if we succeed in passing the general provisions, relevant departments will promote the specific rules and regulations and help the public understand their meaning and purpose. But this is after the provisions have been ratified. We are aware of the importance of using simple language in the law. For difficult words, we offer simple explanations so that representatives at the meeting, especially those of farmers and workers, can better understand them.
And do you take seriously the representatives' comments, because they are clearly not knowledgeable about the subtleties of differences? So you and the professionals who are drafting this, how do you take comments from people who really have no knowledge of the background, take that seriously? It seems like a kind of an exercise more of show than of substance.
Well, we can't say comments from a certain representative make little sense just because he lacks sufficient knowledge and background. It's just that each represents a different voice. From the representative's perspective, his comment has value based on his past experiences. Because the civil law affects all, everyone has a word to say. Sure, the general public may not be able to come up with professional feedback, but their life experiences enable them to put in simple language their understanding of issues related to their needs. So there must be value in it. The problem is, when faced with different voices, how do we choose and decide? Well, we Chinese have a proverb. We seek common ground while resolving differences. We adopt opinions that have a lot of support and the consensus of the majority. For controversial topics, we do further investigation and research to help us in decision-making. Legislation is a process of seeking consensus from the biggest majority and maximizing social justice. Scientific and democratic legislation calls for a broad solicitation of public opinion.
I've been very positively impressed by the fact that some of the issues that are being discussed in the new general provisions of civil law are being debated openly. And that different experts, generally legal scholars, come out on different sides, and there's open debate about the nature of a person, whether it's an independent or whether it should be part of some other system or should be an independent system. And I think that's very healthy. Have you noticed an increase in the willingness of the Chinese authorities to allow open debate, as opposed to the old illusion that everybody was unified on whatever they were unified on, which always kept switching, of course, but at any given moment everybody was always thinking the same, even though it kept changing. But now people are saying it's okay for people to have honest debate on very sophisticated ideas.
Yes, I think that's also is a very good example. We say our specific characters. You know, in China, the People's Congress, I think the deputies is more than 2,000 and more. It's quite different with US or any other, systems. Making the law in the West is just some expertise or congressman things, but in the country, all other laws during the time they try open discuss to the other society. They collect ideas.
So that's a really interesting point, because in the U.S. and in most congressional or parliamentary systems, the people elected generally have a legal background or something close to that, and so that on any given issue, a legal code being a prime one, that only the experts are involved in it. And they put it together, and then they talk about it in a fairly closed group. In China, the CPPCC, in which you're a member, is almost 3,000 delegates, and very few of them are like you, a lawyer. So is it beneficial so that when you have other people who are really unsophisticated, not knowledgeable about these highly technical, to give their opinion? Is their opinion really worth anything?
So it's very interesting things. Let's we say something specific in China. I agree with you. The common people who knows nothing with legal background, their idea may be not relevant, but for sure we can find some very useful ideas, because the law is for the people. So the people's idea is always important for us. Another issue is for Chinese, we can stand in the U.S., the jury, during the hearings, okay? The judge is there, but the final decision is by the jury. It's nothing with legal background, but they have a right to make a decision.
The draft general provisions of civil law submitted to the National People's Congress for review is a milestone in two ways. First, its substance begins to formalize President Xi's commitment to strengthen rule of law. Second, the course of its development exemplifies the evolution of the NPC. While in the past, the NPC no doubt earned well its rubber stamp image, the process of developing a civil code shows that progress is being made. The way of thinking that discloses public disputes and even encourages public debates is a breakthrough. Controversy like competition fosters innovation. We've watched in real time as the draft general provisions of civil law makes its way through a transforming NPC. I've sat in on discussions, lots of opinions, not all of them knowledgeable, of course, but that's okay. That it has taken an unusually long time, required multiple drafts, faced several rejections, and still has unresolved conflicts is, to me, a growth spurt for rule of law in China. Contemporary issues are complicated, and facile answers can have unintended consequences. The more the NPC encourages debate, the more the NPC benefits society. Watch the NPC to keep closer to China.